watching on HRTV and listening on Sirius Satellite Radio, which now we are part of the Sirius family, partially here, HRTV. And if you do listen to Sirius you're listening right now, you know that our next guest has been a longtime member of the radio airwaves and can be heard on Sirius celebrating his 9th year on the radio airwaves. He's a good friend of HRTV, and he's a good friend of all of ours. Hopefully he is one of yours. Steve Bick. Steve, welcome to Race Day.
Good morning, Peter, and good morning, Joanne. And they've listened for 3 hours. They may be sick of me.
Good morning.
Steve, congratulations. 9 years on the air. You're part of Sirius XM. Did you ever think you'd be going 9 years and counting?
No, and in fact, on a regular basis, I have to reevaluate that what constitutes this job is happening and is a real job. As you guys all know, it's so much fun being involved in this game and trying to help people understand it more and enjoy it more. It's a privilege.
Well, Steve, you mentioned 3 hours a day, and people might be sick of you. Obviously, they're not, because you've been running 9 years now. But 3 hours with TV and the aid of visuals and getting breaks here and there, to fill content on radio is very, very difficult. Do you have, what's your, rundown for the day? Do you have commentary, handicapping? Are you interview heavy for people that haven't heard your show? What do you try and hit on each day?
It's a news magazine, and of course the show for a long time was in the afternoons. It was 4 to 7, and there we were interfacing with the daily racetrack feeds and playing races. And when we went to the mornings, about, I guess it's 3 years probably, maybe 4, and then it more or less became kind of a news magazine. And really, I think what it's become is kind of a Today Show for racing. And so I try to keep it interesting and keep people engaged by touching on all the various aspects of this industry and of the game as a wagering proposition. So at the core is the day-to-day racing and the big events that we all look forward to, and then how to approach them. So we're trying to teach people how to be successful betting races. That's really at the core. But then everything that is involved from that point, the breeding and the sales and the sales prep and career prep, the actual day-to-day training operation, the business, the regulating. We touch on absolutely everything, and one of the things I always hear from people is they enjoy it because there's a little bit of everything. And I find it so easy to put 3 hours together a day. Sometimes you get off the air and you think, I wish we had another hour.
Steve, it's obvious it's a structured show, but for those who listen, for those of us who've actually been on the show, it doesn't come across, it seems very loose, very, very comfortable for folks, your guests, folks that are on the show. You're definitely somebody who likes to prop up racing, in a sense, in a positive way. You're not a negative guy. And of all the guests you've had over the years, and there's been a ton of them, are there any that really kind of stick out to you, some of the more memorable moments of the show?
That's fun, actually. It's a fun question. And of course, I'm just coming off vacation today to start this 9th season, and we had a best of. And so Casey and I, Casey G, who's been a long-time producer, engineer for the show, and I couldn't do anything without, we put together best ofs, and we pull a lot of those kinds of memorable moments. And it's fun because I've been in the car a lot down here in Florida these last 10 days, and I've heard a few things. I had Jack Whitaker on last year. Randy Moss arranged it for me, and just the sound of his voice was chilling to me to bring Jack Whitaker and his specifically, we spent time talking about Secretariat, and we played cuts from the Secretariat Belmont broadcast with him and Frank Wright and Haywood Hailbrunn. John Nehrude. I've had John Nehrude on this show going back to 2006, probably 7 or 8 times, and to be able to call on someone like John Nehrude and have this generation of stakeholder and fan and horse player hear from John, to me has been a real treasure. T.J. Kelly, Tom Kelly, who we just lost here in the last 4 or 5 months, and having a couple of conversations, extended conversations with T.J. at Saratoga. Those were conversations that come to mind. Bill Backer, the Virginia breeder. There's one that was to me, a treasure. An industry, an advertising industry legend, and a guy who's been involved in the game 40, 50 years. That one sticks out from last year, top of mind. And then there's all those moments. Every time there's a recap of a Triple Crown event or a Breeders' Cup, there's something that's a permanent record for me of that moment in time. Todd Pletcher, the Monday after Rags to Riches, won the Belmont. You want to hear something, you want to hear joy in Todd Pletcher's voice, something people don't think he displays enough emotion. You go back to hear that. He was ebullient. Just remarkable. Things like that stick in mind. John Shirrup's, after Zenyatta won the Classic, the Monday after with Steve Askin and myself. So many things like that. You guys know what it's like because you get the rare privilege to present it.
Absolutely. We know what it's like. And we also know what it's like. Sometimes you have to, have guests on, or there's somebody that you need to talk to because they have something going on that's important. And you wonder, is this going to work? And occasionally they hit a home run and shock the heck out of you. Who are an interview or two or an incident or two of something that you thought, this might not go well, that just really made you just feel incredibly gratified they hit a home run?
That's a fabulous question, and maybe I'm ill-prepared to have one come to mind that immediately. I can think of a couple because, Joanne, you phrased that perfectly, in terms of some people that you know going in, or you can immediately sense are not that comfortable. John Parada, who of course mounted at the races to begin with Joe Gracie and Anita St. Clair, John used to say, this is one of those guests who when you ask a question, they nod their head. And that doesn't work real well on radio. So there are some people like that that aren't immediately comfortable, but if you disarm them and you connect, it'll flow. I don't want to embarrass him, but I know Jim Bennis, who won the NHC, and we always have the NHC champion on each year the following week, and he is a media-shy individual, and we ended up having a terrific conversation with him. Michael Bachik, we were all so used to Bachik, who's so outgoing and so comfortable in front of the camera and microphone, but when you find somebody who you really want to kind of mine the nuggets, you're right, Joanne. That always is special. Jim, the conversation with Bennis at the beginning of the year comes to mind immediately.
Steve, in this day and age, especially in the racing world, there are the naysayers. There are the folks who, I don't want to say they're getting joy out of it, but they want to tear it down. They want to say, here's what's wrong, here's what's wrong. You're one of the exceptions on radio and television. You always want to build it up. Where do you see us going in the coming years? Do you see it as positive?
Well, I'm a Pollyanna by trade, and I just don't understand. I understand where it comes from, where the negativity comes from, and a lot of it has to do simply with the nature of the game. There's one winner in a race. And in the pari-mutuel system, there's way more people that are going to lose than win. And there's more breeders and owners and everyone that's a stakeholder that are going to lose more often, way more often than they win. So the basic premise of what this sport and industry is says that you're going to have people that are frustrated and angry. And you have to deal with that, and you have to understand it and be sympathetic and empathetic toward it. But at the same time, I'm bewildered by people that in the face of handle numbers that are up and that are in the face of sales numbers that are way up, and all these things you look around, whether it's Del Mar, Saratoga, Oaklawn, Keeneland, the Triple Crown events, everywhere you look, there's nothing but positives, and yet you get this cacophony of negativity from a group that exactly wants to tear things down and say, oh, the game is dying. Look around. The game is hardly dying. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs hundreds of thousands, and we've all got to take a long view and work together. And the best place to start is by acknowledging that, granted, it's not 1950, it's not 1970, but other industries, other sports have plenty of problems that they're facing. Ours are difficult because we're divergent and we're broken up into 37 jurisdictions. But overall, things are a lot better than a certain group seems to want to acknowledge. And so once you start there and say, the core of the tree is healthy, if you want to do some pruning and bolster it up, that's fine. But don't, the LBJ, I love the Lyndon Johnson quote, don't spit in the soup, we've all got to eat it.
What a great way to close out on this one. Steve, listen, for those who maybe haven't had a chance to catch your act, when and where can they do it?
Monday through Friday, 9 to noon Eastern Time, Sirius 93, XM 209, Sports Zone Online, 961, and then it gets repeated the next morning. And, of course, got a tip of the cap before I go to Sirius XM itself, because the commitment that they've made to racing, Steve Cohen and Brian Hamilton and everybody in New York and Washington, the big event coverage, HRTV feed, HRRN in the afternoons, down the stretch on Saturdays, and me in the mornings, Monday through Friday. It's a place that is devoted to those that want to believe and want to be a part of thoroughbred racing.
You're doing a good work there, Steve. You're a good man. Thanks so much for being with us. Continued success. Let's hear about 10, 12, and 13-year anniversaries coming up. And don't be a stranger. Join us again here on Race Day.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, Joanne, and thanks, Peter.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Steve Bick from Sirius XM Satellite Radio, Monday through Friday.
He's right about that, the naysayers that, it's a dying game, because my doctor and people that aren't into racing really, when I went to the doctor over the weekend, he said, racing's really coming back, isn't it? Because the publicity is just better, and we've had some marquee horses and just some things that are turning back on again, and that's nice to see.
All right. And we have Steve Bick, and check him out on Sirius XM Satellite Radio. We're going to take a time out. We'll be back with more at Darren Rogers on the other side.
I'm only in my 60s. I've got a nice long life ahead, big plans. So when I found out Medicare doesn't pay all my medical expenses, I looked at my options. Then I got a Medicare supplement insurance plan.
If you're eligible for Medicare, you may know it only covers about 80%